Greetings, YouTube visitors and brothers and sisters in Christ. Welcome to another edition of Around the World News. It's been a while since I've last done an edition of Around the World News, so we're going to catch you up with the financial information you might be looking for and some political commentary as well. All right, let's start right off for tonight's commentary. International communist revolutionary financial elite globalist money-bashing speculator Zionist billionaire oligarch George Soros must be thrilled. The U.S. dollar fell to another new contract low on 9/8/2017. Gold climbed to a new 12-year high on September 8, 2017. October 13th through the 15th is the important International Monetary Fund World Bank meeting. Will a major change occur in the global financial order at that time? China has initiated a gold-backed oil's future. Oil to be traded in yuan and gold, according to Putin. Central banks continue to accumulate gold. After elite globalist Zionist, former governor of Bank of Israel, Israeli citizen Stanley Fischer, arguably the most powerful man in the world, spent years destroying the U.S. dollar and creating endless asset bubbles, pumping up the stock and bond markets while destroying the market's price discovery mechanism and distorting risk analysis, has now suddenly, unexpectedly resigned as Fed Vice Chairman effective mid-October. Perfect timing, Stanley. Bitcoin rushed toward $5,000 before Red China stepped in to stop it. Something big and ugly is brewing in the world's corrupt, debt-bloated, digital fiat currency banking system. And for the petrodollar and the U.S. dollar, which has been in a consistent downtrend since January 3rd of this year, not to mention the negative economic impact of back-to-back U.S. hurricanes, a powerful Republican group with 155 members opposed Trump extending the U.S. debt ceiling to a Christmas shock. Plus, power and influence are rapidly slipping away from Israel in the Middle East. We face the increasing risk of war involving Israel and Syria, North Korea, Ukraine, linking in Russia and China. Bullish for oil, gold, silver, commodities generally. Are the foundations of the New World Order, the United States globalist empire, and deep state eroding? Holding gold, silver, cash, and select stocks and real estate fully owned, diversified internationally seems to be a prudent way to protect your wealth now. If I had to guess, I would speculate that we will be all aghast at what our world has become by the end of this October. Truly a Halloween, second highest day of witchcraft of the year, nightmare for Joe Sixpack on U.S. suburban Elm Street. And then a quote by Jewish author and columnist James Howard Kunstler. Quote, God is rather cross with the world's #1 exceptional nation. Irma may be a fatal blow to the banking system. The mind reels at the insurance implications of what's about to happen. Urgent obligations triggered by an event of this scale can't possibly be serviced. Look for it to snap the chain of counterparty leverage that has been propping up the banks, insurers, pension funds on mere promises for years on end. Finance, both private and public, has been feeding off reality, or rather unreality, since well before the tremor of 2008. The destruction of Florida and whatever else stands in the way up the line will be as real as it gets, unquote. That's from Swamp Fever, dated September 8th, 2017. Swamp Fever, I guess that's an article he wrote. And then Ari says, markets recognize and honor anniversary dates. Markets are collectives, like nations, emotionally driven. Therefore, I do not think it is any coincidence that Irma is flattening the southeast United States, or that Montana is being torched on the anniversary of 9/11. There's some other articles that I'm going to post. How Harvey and Irma will slam the U.S. economy. That's at zerohedge.com. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina face catastrophic storm surge. Also at zerohedge.com. Montana is ablaze. Gold trading volume hit a record high as the U.S. dollar crashed. 10-year Treasury yields headed to 0%. U.S. crude oil production collapses. Rig counts drop to 3-month lows. What else? U.S. wages have stagnated because the U.S. economy is an elitist Wall Street economy optimized for financialization. Millennials had 1/3 of all poverty-stricken U.S. households. The rest live with mom. The Washington National Cathedral, a central landmark in the United States Capitol, has announced its decision to remove 2 stained glass windows honoring Confederate Generals Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. A group of students from an Iowa high school were disciplined on September 6, after a photo of them wearing white hoods, waving a Confederate flag, and burning a cross began circulating on social media, according to the AP, the Associated Press. The Trump administration called on the United States Supreme Court to let bakers and potentially other wedding vendors refuse on free speech grounds to provide services for homosexual ceremonies. A new paper from Stanford researchers claims they have created a machine learning system that can tell from a few pictures whether a person is a homosexual or a heterosexual. Murderers, rapists, and pedophiles are just some of the people who were reportedly given top-secret security clearances by the United States federal government as it faces a huge bureaucratic backlog. Reverend Millie Horning Peters, a Kentucky United Methodist preacher, believes religious leaders should be more involved in promoting abortions and helping women get them. Well, so much for the apostate United Methodist Church, which is part of the World Council of Churches, I believe, or the National Council of Churches. A law student at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland who supports President Trump is now under investigation for, get this, Islamophobia, after he mocked ISIS in a Facebook post. DACA illegals and their undocumented parents who brought them to the United States are responsible for the, quote, limbo they are in, not the U.S. government, certainly not Trump. It was communist-mentored Obama who acted unconstitutionally. DACA was never based upon U.S. law, but by an illegal executive order, which itself is unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. Israel bombed a Syrian site in Hama province on September 6th. Mexico had an 8.2 earthquake, the strongest earthquake in a century, killing at least 58. Well, that's a low number considering the magnitude of that earthquake. I mean, an 8.2 could have resulted in 5 or 10 or 20,000 deaths easily. What else? The 1% has started to embrace Bitcoin. These are just headlines of articles. War on cash backfires on India. Monsanto is at it again. Fights to sell Arkansas farmers herbicides linked to crop damage. Trump has caved in to the deep state. First to Wall Street when he ringed himself with exclusively Goldman Sachs men in financial positions of power. Then with the neocons, nearly all elite Zionists, agents of Israel, on the globalist New World Order's U.S. military/industrial complex empire. And now making a deal with the devil. Democrats on the U.S. debt ceiling, not to mention Trump's DACA cave-in. yeah, we have to ask ourselves, is Trump really draining the swamp? Well, there's a lot of conservative critics who say no, he's not. He's surrounded himself with Zionists, those who favor the nation of Israel. And, you know, I didn't vote for Trump. And one might argue that he's perhaps better than Hillary Clinton, but how much better remains to be seen. I mean, I think the debt is going to continue to skyrocket, okay? It seems like he's given the conservatives breadcrumbs, but perhaps he's feeding the deep state the big loaves of bread. I don't know. I mean, we're going to see what happens. This economy could crash under Trump, and he'll get blamed for that. Markets, not governments, improve race relations. Globalists throw Antifa to the wolves to further their agenda. These are all headlines, by the way, articles. Why the War Party loves to call foreign leaders insane. Israel on the warpath again in Syria. Stephen Colbert gives Trump Nazi salute. South Park video game gets more difficult based upon character's skin tone. ISIS supporters celebrate Hurricane Irma. May Allah drown the enemies of Islam. More opioid prescriptions than people in some California counties. Twitter bans a mother for criticizing Vogue's anal sex guide. Hurricane Irma update. I won't go any further here, but well, let me read this last headline. Our sun unleashed monster solar flare, strongest in a decade. Russia puts its people subject to heart attacks and strokes, and patients who are psychologically marginal in lead-shielded rooms on Faraday cages during such turbulent solar times for their own protection. There's an article on that in space.com. Strongest earthquake in a century hits Mexico. I pointed that out. The 8.2. You know, the Bible talks about wars and rumors of wars, which we have going on right now. But this has always been going on throughout the last 2,000 years. Pestilences. But you know what hasn't been going on the wide scale is marriage and divorce. Okay, this has increased over the last 50 to 70 years, and the rise of homosexuality and same-sex marriage recently. These are signs of God's judgment upon a nation or a people who are in rebellion against his laws. And since this is worldwide, we can speculate that we are near the end of time. Now, nobody knows the day or the hour when the Lord will return. People like Mr. Camping predicted May of 21st, 2011. He was wrong. Some of his followers have turned that into a spiritual judgment, but that wasn't the intention of Mr. Camping. He predicted a physical, literal judgment, the Lord's return, but that didn't happen. So we have to be careful. In fact, we just don't know when the Lord's going to return. But we can see the signs around us. And the wise in heart are actually looking for the second coming, the soon appearing of the Lord Jesus Christ. But there are those in the post-millennial camp, of course, who say that Matthew 24 has already been fulfilled, that we're looking for a golden age, that we're just going through a temporary tumultuous period of time, and it'll all correct itself, and humanism will die out, and the world will become Christianized. If you can believe that nonsense. I don't see that at all taught in the scriptures. And one post-millennialist has said that the 20th century was the bloodiest century in the history of the world. And the Lenin and Stalin purges, Hitler, Pol Pot, Mao Zedong. So it could hit the United States in the next 10 or 20 years, okay? There could be massive bloodletting if we see World War III, or if the war on terror escalates. You see, this war on terror is a phony war on terror, just like the war on poverty, the war on drugs. We have a lot of drugs today. We have a lot of poverty. We have a lot of, quote, terror. And we have to keep this boogeyman alive, this terror, this threat of terror. But as you research the 9/11 attacks, and you see that it was an inside job, you'll see that this whole thing has escalated. The Patriot Act and the Homeland Security coming into creation. So it's all designed as a way of taking away your freedoms and liberties, gaining centralized control for the elite, the globalists, who want a one world government, who want a one world government, a new world order. They've talked about it and continuously in their political speeches. But we know that this is not of God, but it is of Satan. And God is allowing it to happen. But the Christian is as an individualist. He's a freedom lover. He's not a collectivist. He believes in limited government. He doesn't make a god or an idol out of the government like the socialists and the liberals. No, you cannot look to your government for every solution. What we see today is that the government is creating a lot of problems, and then, as I said before, they kick you in the leg, they break your leg, and then they hand you some crutches and say, see, without our help, you couldn't walk, essentially. It's what they're saying. So, no, we have to be self-sufficient, dependent on God. We have to help one another, but we also have to work, and we cannot depend on other people to help us. You have to work and save up for that rainy day, for that emergency situation that may hit us at any moment. Okay, here's something on DACA. MSM, Dogma Lies Exposed. 1. This is only the fault of the parents. My wife was born in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, and came to America as a small child, but she was brought here by her parents legally and remained here legally until she obtained her citizenship, something she prizes above most everything else. This is how immigration is supposed to work. If you ask my wife about DACA, she blames the parents of those children who, unlike her own parents, broke the law and put their children in this situation. If your parents don't pay the rent, is it the landlord's fault when you're evicted? Or is it the fault of your parents? If your parents sneak into Disneyland without paying, is it Disney's fault when you're booted out, or is it the fault of your parents? If your parents sneak you into a country illegally, is it the country's fault when you get deported, or is it the fault of your parents? Well, clearly it's the fault of your parents. DACA recipients are illegal aliens, period. Second point, this simple fact has been so downplayed in memory hold, it just needed to be spoken out loud. All right? 3, DACA is a massive amnesty program. Yes, of course. Although the dreamers are in the country illegally, DACA allows some 800,000 to stay in the country legally without any kind of penalty. Qualified dreamers are not only given a 2-year deferment from deportation, they are eligible for a work permit, which means they can legally take a job in America. Four, DACA recipients are not the children. DACA is eligible only to those aged 15 to 32. A very large percentage of DACA recipients are adults, not children or even minors. 5, DACA recipients take jobs Americans will do. The idea that illegal aliens take jobs Americans won't do is, of course, a lie. Plenty of Americans, most especially young Americans, would love the opportunity to work on a construction site or some other manual labor job. Moreover, if the wages were better, plenty of Americans would be willing to work in the fields. An untold number of young Americans who live in farm communities already do. But when you flood the country with illegal and or foreign workers, this by design suppresses wages to a point where only those willing to be exploited are willing to do this work for almost no money. Nevertheless, even this lie does not apply to dreamers.